5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it's live.
This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Watch and subscribe on YouTube and listen on your podcast platform.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good night, good day, goodbye, hello. Wherever you are in the world, one of those will apply to you. And wherever you are in the world, you will, of course, be watching Premier League football. Probably watching it a hell of a lot cheaper and a hell of a lot easier than most of us who reside in the country where it is actually played. But look, don't start me on that argument. Don't start me. How are you all? Welcome along. If you are watching via YouTube, thank you so very much indeed. As indeed Scott is. I'll say good morning. Oh, good morning. Good evening to Scott. How are you? Thanks for joining us, mate. And if you are watching, join in the chat, get some questions in. We'll try and fit some of those in towards the end of the show. Got a great guest on tonight. If you're watching on catch up, stick your comments in below. Always pleased to read those. Just keep them respectful. And if you are listening via your favourite podcast platform, thank you very much for lending me your ears. How are you doing? And if you've had enough of a certain Mr. Musk, you've had enough of Twitter stroke X stroke Z stroke, whatever it's called these days, get over to Blue Sky. We're on it. As you can see there, LTID TV, as with everything else. I think you don't have to put it, but you can put .bsky.social. That's my full address there. Look, we all know... we all love to hate the referees, don't we? A certain David Coote hasn't particularly helped himself recently, although in fairness, he probably didn't put the video out. But Football 365 is asking here, has referee scrutiny produced a generation of egotistical sociopaths? That might be going a little bit too far. They are under, and let's be honest with you, let's take off our fan-tinted glasses here. They are under a lot of pressure. You know, they are expected to get it right. If not, they're expected to be told to get it right by VAR. Has it gone too far? Are we now just sort of... Basically, have we ruined? And why does anybody still want to be a referee? That's the question. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to ask a former referee, a former Premier League referee, a former UEFA referee, and not only that, he was ex-chief executive of the PGMOL, which is the referee's body. So if anybody is experienced to answer the questions, my guest this evening is. And that's Keith Hackett. We'll bring him in now. Keith, thank you very, very much for giving up your time. As we said before, is obviously a busy time for you at the moment. And thank you for coming back on the channel.
Oh, delighted to be back on. Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Look, I mean, I said, well, that's going a little bit too far, calling the referees a generation of egotistical sociopaths. But it says here, and to expand on it, who would want to be a Premier League referee? Somebody with ridiculously with ridiculous self-belief and a thick skin. Have we done this to our referees? Do you think there is before we get into the allegations, are we putting too much pressure on the referees?
Well, I think that when I look at my own career as an example, first of all, I enjoyed visiting and refereeing in 35 countries as a match referee, something I didn't appreciate. That's what I would do when I set off refereeing. I had 12 years in the local parks. It conditions you because there's one man and a dog, and that might be a verbal exchange from him that you hear with clarity. You know, we talk about pressure. We talk about how referees' performances are now forensically examined.
Yeah.
The difference is I was an amateur in a professional game. And I got 35 quid, for example, for refereeing the FA Cup final in 81.
Wow.
In 2000, around that period, I put forward proposals that we should go professional as referees. The reason? The game was increasing in speed. The ability to get time off work. I'd lost 3 jobs in my career because I chose refereeing over a pension and all that went with it. So we needed professional referees. We needed their availability. We needed to be fitter and to cope with the increasing demands. So we made them professional. We brought in sports science, fitness experts, nutritionalists, sports psychologists, all aimed at improving standards, improving fitness, understanding the game more because they had more time to train, they had more time to discuss. What I used to do is the referees used to meet every week, sometimes every 2 weeks, at either Staverton near Banbury or Warwick University. They'd train in the opening couple of hours, and then we'd look at video clips and examine our decisions, mainly those that we got wrong, and we'd discuss them as a group. And then hopefully when the referees left that room, they would in fact not repeat those errors. The accountability was that if referees at that stage couldn't meet that level of pressure, performance, delivery of accuracy, then just like a football manager who moves from the Championship to the Premier League, there are some players who are not good enough at that elite level. And so I decided the same. So there were referees, that were demoted. There were some referees that were, dismissed completely from the game because they were not good enough. So what has happened? As I see it, I brought in, by the way, communication kits and goal line technology. The goal line technology is they've had one error. I think they forgot to switch it on. Aston Villa United. But the premise of that system was to get the technology right. And I said to Okai in that development, because I was clearly involved, look, I don't want any communication between the referee and the system. Only one aspect. Say it's a goal, nothing else. Now, what we've seen in the last 6 years, and I remind people we're 6 years into VAR, is a disaster for referee. I'm for technology. The simplicity of having someone check the major decisions is logical. But what do? We forget the fans, first of all. They're not, you're sat in a stadium as you do, as I do, and we go to VAR, we haven't got a clue what's happening.
Yeah.
I watch a game of rugby. If you go down the road and watch rugby, you know full well that you can listen in to what the referee is doing and saying, and through the big screen, the match officials interrogate that decision. I cannot believe that that's not part of the system of entertainment, that we have the big screen, that the referee has to talk through the decision on the big screen. And why are referees just, when they go to the monitor, skimming it? Because I sometimes need to see it 6 or 7 times on whether there's contact, whether it's a penalty, and therefore I think the whole aspect of VAR is not well operated by the PGMOL. I'm not blaming the system.
No.
I think that what it's done is encouraged and developed lazy refereeing. And let's face it, however you look at it, you've got some referees on that panel that shouldn't be there. And I thought that when Mike Riley, who took over from me, started this path of declining refereeing standards, not just mirrored by me and fans, but the media as a whole, he had to go, and eventually Howard Webb came in. And I thought Howard Webb would be the winner.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's just like a manager who inherits a losing team. If he keeps that losing team and he can't motivate them to be better, then he's out of a job. So at the moment, they're not delivering.
I think we all hope, well, I certainly hoped, I think a lot of fans hoped that, when Howard Webb, he was probably our most respected referee for many a year. And like Collini, I can never say his name, the Italian referee, there's referees you look at and you think, and I think we all felt he would come in, that he would sort it out. And like you say, he hasn't been able to. It's like, like you say, a manager it's like Eric Ten Hag taking over Manchester United. Just changing the manager isn't going to make the decisions right. Somebody said to me once, because of course we were in the Championship. I'm a Leicester fan, as you know, and we were in the Championship last year, and I actually loved it because it got back to, and I was all for VAR at the start, and it was a case of if the goal went in, you looked to the linesman, his flag was down, you could celebrate. Yes, mistakes were made, but you accepted that the referee might have been blindsided or, couldn't see through a row of players. And you do tend to sort of even themselves out. And guy said to me, he said, well, yeah, but that happens with VAR. But I think the thing with VAR is that we expect it to be right, it's technology to be right 100% of the time. We shouldn't have to rely on that to balance out.
And you're right. I mean, of course, one of the other things is that we saw in the Euros and the World Cup the use of the semi-automated offside system. And that, for your listeners, is their own cameras installed in the stadium, first of all, not broadcast cameras. So the speed of those cameras are intensified, just like goal line technology, 7 cameras around each goal, 500 frames per second. What we've got is, in that semi-automated system is a chip in the ball, an Adidas ball, that immediately that is kicked, it creates a picture of where the players are they offside or not, very, very accurately. Now, being in offside position is not an offence. What they have to do is obviously then interpret interference and various other things. Excuse me. So I think that what we're seeing now is the PGMOL operating or trying to bring in their own system rather than buying it off the shelf. And so they're overcomplicating it again.
I mean, when you look at like cricket or when you look at tennis, well, I mean, if you take tennis as the basic example, like with goal line technology, the ball is in or out. It's not a case of did it touch 4 players before and somebody's bottom and then somebody's elbow or whatever. It is a lot simpler. And I just think, in a way, maybe it's not just VAR that we need to change, but for the referees, but to help the referees out, maybe we need to make the rules simpler.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got in this drawer somewhere the laws of the game for 1936.
Yes.
And And the reason I've got it, somebody sent me because we were discussing the handball law. And we were having a bit of an argument. Now, I've got to say that this is two referees.
Right.
And so we're having an argument as referees about interpretation of the offside law. And the reality is, we both came down and said, what needs to be done is, first of all, we need to overemphasize, if need be, the word deliberate. Because in 1936, a free kick was awarded, or a penalty kick if it's inside the area, for a deliberate handball. It says nothing else.
Yeah.
It don't get into the body shape and distance and all that. What the IFAB have done, the International Football Association Board, who are the lawmakers, is to try to make it easier for the referee by scripting it out. And what they've done is complicated it for everybody, the referees and the fans. And so we get two referees and more arguing and failing to agree on what is an handball decision.
And do you think that, like you say, it is still down to, human opinion? Because, you can, two different people can read two different pages of script and interpret it two different ways. Look at politics. One set of stats means one to one thing and one to somebody else. And when I think it was not this World Cup, probably the last World Cup, there was a referee, there was two assistant referees, a fourth official, a VAR, an assistant VAR, and then there was somebody else, and I can't even remember what he was doing for the VAR. There were 7 officials doing one match. Now, if as a referee, if I make a decision and I say, right, that's a penalty or that's a free kick, in my mind, I can justify why I've made that decision. But as soon as somebody says, "Ooh, you need to go and have a look at that," then suddenly there's a load of doubt in my mind.
Well, it's almost a conditioning. You're absolutely right what you're saying, because he knows that man or woman in the VAR room will allegedly only come in when it's a clear and obvious error. So immediately VAR whispers in his ear, right? He's already conditioned as he's walking to the screen. He's conditioned to the fact that I've made an error. Now, I think that what they need to be is a bit bloody minded. And I think they need to go to the screen and say to the guy, get lost. I'm sticking with what I've done. Now, I've been in that position where you're giving penalty kicks. Let me tell you, you don't give a penalty kick on a guess.
No.
What you do is you don't give anything. And it might be inching towards a penalty kick, but if you're not 100%, you don't give it. That's how you brought up in refereeing. And
I think as well, I think it was the Women's World Cup, and it's the only time personally I've watched a game where it's happened. I think it has happened elsewhere, but the referee went over to the screen, watched the screen, came back, and that was when they were mic'd up and they had to make an announcement. As you said, I've been asked to check the screen. I've reviewed my decision. I stand by what I said.
Yeah.
And
good on her.
The respect that you gave to her, because you're sticking by that decision, right or wrong, you're sticking by it because you believed it to be right.
There's many things that are wrong. I mean, what it's created, first of all, is I put it under the banner of lazy refereeing. And that isn't the physical aspect. This is about seeing referees in a good position around the penalty area with a clear penalty kick decision, hesitating, waiting for somebody to bellow in the ear. And you suddenly go, just a minute. Then we have to get back to the basics. The basics are this. I wouldn't ask Jamie Vardy to play in a game on a Saturday and then get in his car, wherever he's playing, it might be Newcastle or it might be on the South Coast, drive to Stockley Park, because tomorrow at 12 o'clock, you're going to be VAR. And so you wouldn't ask a professional player to do 2 games in a weekend. So that's the first bit. Then there's another issue which can be, I think, overcome with a better teamwork relationship. You might have a referee who's had 2 or 3 games in the Premier League, and his VAR is Michael Oliver, allegedly our number 1 referee.
Yeah.
And Michael Oliver says it's a penalty kick. It's a penalty kick. Or Michael Oliver doesn't come in. And you're suddenly thinking at times, who's refereeing this game?
Yeah.
The senior man at Stockley Park. And so there are aspects that I think are easily resolved. Because I think, Howard Webb quietly is moving to a permanent panel slowly. I noticed Paul Tierney and Graham Scott, those referees that are in that retiring age, are already now VAR week in, week out. But then we look at, so that's one aspect of it. But I think that what's happened in, take away that technology bit, what has happened in recent years is the working relationship that you had with players, that ability to have a quiet word, to run alongside, and the player says to you, that was an absolutely outrageous decision, ref. And you go, hey, what about the goal you've just missed? Empty net, mate.
Yeah.
Or you actually go, you've seen a challenge, slightly mistimed, and instead of thrusting a yellow card in front of the referee, why don't the referee just go up and say, hey, just a minute, seen what you've done. I want an improvement in your behaviour. I want an improvement in your challenging. Or why don't you go to the goalkeeper who's clearly wasting time? Why don't you have a quiet word and say, I know what's going off? And then he says to the captain, next time he's doing that, I'm going to hammer him. I've already had a word. You can have a word. If he doesn't speed up things, I'm going to yellow card him.
I mean, you do see that with the very good referees, because they'll issue a yellow card and they'll actually go like 1, 2, 3, put it over. And, it's your 4th offence. I've got no choice now. And obviously, also you've got the relationship, I think, between referees and managers, which is obviously going to take us on to the major topic. But that is deteriorating because you see the managers, their job's under pressure. A wrong decision can mean they lose the game. It means they could lose the job. That said, let's face it with you, I don't think there's any other industry where you lose your job and you're still paid for the remainder of your contract.
I know.
I never feel sorry for anybody losing the manager's job, I tell you. No. But again, that pressure between, we've seen it, whether it be Klopp, whether it be Mourinho, Fergie was obviously well known for,
Yeah, I think a lot of managers will see the referee as a whipping boy and an excuse for either a poor decision or a poor result from the team. Who we're going to blame? It ain't me. It's the referee. So look, I understand the referee's the Aunt Sally in certain situations, but in reality, they also have this outburst, knowing full well that I put in place an arrangement. Let me sort of give an outline. I mean, when I took on the PGMOL, we had assessors, former referees, assessing the performance of the referee. That's like policemen policing policemen, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I went to the Premier League and said, look, I'd like a panel of observers made up of ex-players, ex-managers. They might be in the middle of getting a job or not. I want them to go to the games. I want them to mark the referee and to review their performance and discuss with the referee post-match and pre-match that particular game. And that's still in place. So the manager can have a go with the match delegate. And then the other thing is 30 minutes after the game, they can knock on the referee's door and approach the referee and seek clarification on anything.
Yeah.
So there are channels that are there, but it seems to me at times that, the technical area has become the second entertainment venue at a
Yeah.
football match. It's all a bit like histrionic and a bit stupid at times.
And I think sometimes the referees, and I'm looking at it from both sides here, but the referees find it very easy to blame the referee because they know the fans are.
Yes.
I do watch longs, and the number of times people come on and look, I'll sit here when I'm doing the watch long, and I will scream and swear and shout at the referee and what have you, and then 2 minutes later they'll give us a free kick and go, "Oh, no, you see, he's all right now," sort of thing. But fans do like to say, "Oh, the referee was awful today." 9 times out of 10, it was awful for both sides, and I think that managers tend to use that kind of excuse, if you like, because they know, most of the fans would probably agree with them.
Yeah, I think that I'm sure Howard Webb does, but I used to have the managers in pre-season, and I used to spend a great deal of my time going around and talking to managers when they had conflict, and often, on many occasions they were right, and I would demonstrate what I was doing about in improving performance, improving that referee, or mindful. I used to take great care about the appointments. I think sometimes, we need to understand. I think that what we've created over recent years, particularly with Mike Riley, is we've lost some of the personality of referees.
Yeah.
I go back to 2 people who were in your area. In fact, I could name 4. Mr. Pickwick, Roger Kirkpatrick, huge personality. The referee I admired a lot was Gordon Hill, school teacher, great communicator, great motivator. It's going well, lads. We've had a really good first half. Now that's the first game over. We're going to go for the next game. And keep sharp, keep focused. But there was also John Hunting, who was a local guy in Leicester, and he was quiet, but he was very efficient, very fit. He had a son who played tennis. And then there was Peter Reeves. So Leicester's had a good breeding ground for referees. And of course, those good referees you didn't get as Leicester City.
No. So I've got to just ask a question there, because it's one of the questions that I want to know personally. Look, if I was a referee and my club is Leicester, I cannot referee any game that Leicester's involved in, and
Correct.
that obviously makes sense. If, however, let's say it's the last day of the season and Leicester need to win and hope that Nottingham Forest lose, and Nottingham Forest are playing Everton, would I, as a referee, be allowed to referee Nottingham Forest Everton, even though that result could have an effect on my team?
You've touched on a subject that absolutely drives me crazy.
Oh, sorry.
The situation is, maybe I'm conditioned, because in that situation that you've examined, the answer would be a big no.
Right.
And sometimes you think, oh, I'd love to do that game. But if your team's in promotion battle, the team that you support, that you have to advise the league pre-season, they would say to you, and several weeks before the end of the season, your team's in the promotion game. You're not going to get those top 4 or 5 teams. And likewise at the bottom end. That doesn't happen anymore. I would... I think I refereed Leeds United. I'm Sheffield based. I refereed Leeds United once, because they're Yorkshire clubs. So they even look not just as a town, as a team, but in a county scenario. But that's all changed.
No, and it's changed for the worse. I think it should do that. But look, we spoke about managers and the relationships with referees, and it brings us on to this gentleman just here, Mr. Coote. Now, when it first came out, I'm very much, I'm very anti-woke, if you like. I think these days we've gone too far with the PC and all that. So if you got when you read about these councillors, that when they were 16, they released a social media post that said something that wasn't particularly nice. But they were 16, they were 15. Now they're 30. They've matured as people, etc., etc. I think it's very unfair to look at something that was posted in the past and convict them on that. That said, this video, and until I actually saw it, I didn't. But it was a Liverpool fan that sent it to me, Doug. But I didn't believe it was true. But he sent it to me, and the fact of the matter was that he was doing the job that he's currently doing when that happened. And okay, you could argue, was he on something? Had he drunk? Had a few too many tipples, whatever. But how does he come back from this? I mean, there's that line that you mustn't cross, that the cliff's on the other side, and he's just taken a huge jump over that.
I mean, when I saw it, I was absolutely shocked. And then, of course, a second tape came out with him appearing to be involved with some white powder substance.
Yes.
And again, equally shocked. We have a standard in officiating. I think there are two things. Let me go back to year 2000 when I went to the board. I'd been out in Europe, and I'd been in Germany, and the German FA said to me, "We have a problem. We've got a referee who's going to be put in jail because he's taken bribes." He was an East German, a guy called Heuser. And I was on the plane on the way back and thought, crikey, I'm sort of in that area of managing referees, upholding the reputation, the Jack Taylors, the Partridges, the Courteys, all those people. We have such a high standard of recognition around the world of integrity. And when I saw this, I was absolutely gutted. Because obviously you're looking at a colleague in terms of a referee. You know that any referee that gets to the elite level has gone through probably a 10-year apprenticeship, running around in local parks, washing your own kit, purchasing your own kit, getting 2/3 of nothing for doing it. And here is an elite referee that's getting paid well. There's a standard. I got off that plane and I said to the board of directors of the PGMOL, I want to introduce two things. I want to ban gambling on football worldwide for our referees. And because we're now professional and we're athletes and footballers are drug tested, why shouldn't we do the same? And the board accepted the betting, and we put that into effect within a matter of a couple of weeks. In terms of the drug side, I think in fairness, we probably all thought it's not going to happen, but it would be bad publicity is what they said to me, and therefore we're not bringing it in. Now, there's no way back. If this guy is guilty, as we think he is, then for me, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I'm not woke. I'm woke to some degree, but there is absolutely no way back. He's jumped across a fence that is just not acceptable.
Yes.
If we put in, I'm answering emails before this when referees make poor decisions and fans are saying, their integrity's shot and they're biased towards this club and that club. So within the elements of football and the amount of forensic examination through television that takes place, that integrity is getting shaken every week. And I'm giving assurances that this is not the case. Integrity levels are high. And this guy is a bad apple in the barrel.
I mean, you normally would say if somebody was on drugs, and we've got to say allegedly at this point, but you would tend to say that usually that would sort of enhance their performance. I think with the referee that it actually did that. But just on that point, and let me come back to that point. Let me just say this first of all. Sorry. When you watch it, whatever you think, and let's be honest with you, once you get outside of Merseyside, Klopp was never going to be your favourite manager. So we all sort of didn't like him because, he moaned about the length of the grass or whatever. There was always some excuse. And people will say that about Leicester managers and, opposing fans. So whatever he thinks about a person, that is fine. But when you are working, you cannot come out and say those things. And if you or me were working in a 9 to 5 job and we went out on social media and said, you know what, this company's crap, the boss is a complete and utter tosser, and he didn't know what he's doing, we'd be out on our ear, wouldn't we?
Exactly. And I think that's absolutely the right way and the right approach. This is about your own views. It's about a professional approach. It's Christmas night or Boxing night, and somebody says, I can remember people saying to me, "Aren't you having a drink?" And they go, "I've got a game tomorrow."
Yeah.
I don't consume a lot of alcohol. I don't, I'm professional in my approach, and I think that has to be the expectation. These guys are not earning tuppence halfpenny anymore.
No.
I said to somebody the other day, I was a director of a company, and I'd lost my job. I refereed New Zealand versus Australia in a World Cup game.
Right.
And I got back to my hotel and I'd lost my job. It was as simple as that. So now I'm searching for another job, and eventually I get one. And then I'm appointed to referee Stuttgart versus Feyenoord in the European Cup. And the boss says to me, "You're okay going, because it's a 3-day, you're okay. But on Wednesday we were playing. On Thursday, you've got to get back early because there's a board meeting." To achieve that, and remembering I wasn't getting a fee for refereeing in Europe, I had to charter an aircraft for $2,000. Now, I'm not having a moan here. What I am saying is it's about the professionalism right through the piece. How you behave off the field as well as on it. How you have levels of integrity and behavior. In the week that this guy was found out, that same day, I heard that Uriah Rennie, and I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers will know him. Yeah. Uriah was appointed Chancellor of Sheffield Hallam University. This is a guy who had a refereeing career, has throughout his career been a JP, works hard for Sheffield venues in Sheffield, does a lot for the local community. And here he is, a professional referee, a colleague of mine, being appointed as the Chancellor of Sheffield Hallam University. That's the story of someone who has high levels of integrity, very professional in his approach, and worked his career. Both of us, interestingly, as Sheffield referees, we would referee maybe at Filbert Street in my day, and the following day be in the local park on a Sunday morning refereeing 2 amateur teams.
Yeah. I mean, you 100%, and you. I can't argue with anything you're saying as much as I
just think it's beyond me. I mean, look, this is a relatively nice guy, and he's now. Let's just go a little bit deeper and give you a bit more insight, because again, when I was boss, I had to suspend 2 referees. So Coote is suspended. And the process, I can tell you, was very professional. The board of directors, and we've got to recognise the PGMOL is a business, and the board of directors are made up of the CEO of the Premier League, the Football League and the FA. They're the 3 organisations that fund the PGMOL. In my day, they were funding it to the tune of 5 million. That figure now is 33 million.
Wow.
This is not a small figure. But what they did, the board, was they appointed an independent chairman to view both incidents, if you like, separate in time and in fact. But we brought in professional people, professional investigators, lawyers, employment lawyers, all those sort of things. Both referees, by the way, were found not guilty. I think here because he's an employee, right, the PGMOL have a duty of care towards him as an employee. So it's not an easy task if they're going to dismiss him, to dismiss him. They've got to be this, if he's accused, if he's found guilty of using drugs, then in that situation, they've got a duty of care towards him. And somebody might ask, why didn't you put him in the Priory or something like that? So again, ultimately at the end of the day, my view is his career is over.
Yeah, no, I personally agree. But yeah, I mean, I know somewhere I worked, everybody was complaining about a member of staff and she had problems. And, the boss said, look, I can't just do what you're asking to do. Yes, she's causing problems, but I've got a duty of care to her just as much as we have to everybody else. And I think I've got no problem with the PGMOL taking the time to look into this and putting a case together. I think depending on the outcome, though, is how fans will react, because we know that if somebody goes onto camera, that was Klopp when he was the manager here, or Steve Cooper, or anybody goes onto a camera after a match and says, you know what, that referee was pretty rubbish today, he was blah, 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 blah. Or if a player does, they're slapped with a fine straight away.
Right. Correct.
So this is, you can't, it can't be one rule for one and one rule for the other, can it?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there is absolutely no question that if you look at this, the minimum is it's bringing the game into disrepute. There's a criteria of operation. One of the things that I did, not being clever, but I can remember going to the board and saying, I'm going to supply them with laptops and mobile phones. And they thought, that's a bit generous. And I've gone, well, they're my phones, aren't they then? And what do you mean? Well, I see the bills. I see who they're phoning. And if I need to interrogate anything, I can do. And if I need to do that with the laptop, I can pull it in. So I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, I saw that as a duty of care, by the way, not as a form of investigation. This was as much about protecting the referee in terms of his behavior, his process. But again, I think this is about communication. It's about the changing styles of refereeing. And, there are other issues that worry me that we had an average of 3 yellow cards a game, and it's getting close to, well, it's over 5 at the moment. Too many yellow cards, a lack of proactive refereeing, more reactive, referees who seem to want to take over, referees who are failing to see the tactics of a team, an away team coming and closing up the shop. And they don't just do that from a defensive point of view. How much time can we waste? I've said on numerous occasions, the average playing time in the Premier League is 52 minutes. And that's not value for money for the fans. So there are all other aspects.
You are hitting my favourite topic here, because when you have these 98-minute games, and I'm all for that. If I've paid to watch 90 minutes of football,
right?
Not 60 minutes and 30 minutes of people tapping the ball between the goalkeeper or whatever, and walking across the box, or rolling over and doing 10 pirouettes, and laying down injured for a few minutes. I'm having said that, I bet you on that day when you chartered the aeroplane, there wasn't much stoppage time you allowed in that.
I tell you, I was out the ground. I was out the ground pretty quick to the airport, and then a 4-hour delay because the airport was they got a runway problem, and it's another story. But eventually, I got back in time for the board meeting, which was the
problem. Of course, good. The problem, of course, when something like this comes out, all the other stories start to come out, don't they? And I'm reading something today, and again, I've got to say, sort of none of this is backed up. It's all newspaper reports. It's all allegedly. David Coote attempted to organise a Travelodge drug party during Manchester City match. All these little stories now are going to start coming out. And you've got to think, these days, with mobile phones and with cameras everywhere, you cannot get away with anything. And a referee's, career isn't that long when you think about it
No,
at that sort of top professional
no, that's
level.
right.
All they've got to do, and I did like the bit that it said in the Daily Mail, an ex-friend videoed him, and he was a sportsman as well.
Yeah.
And I just think, he obviously regrets it, but what annoys me, and it annoyed me last season because we went down to the EFL and we saw a lot of different things from the different perspective, and the referees that were in the EFL were some of the best. Whether it's just because we'd had sort of 6 years of VAR or not, I don't know. But the referees that were just EFL were really good. They were prepared to make a decision. They weren't blowing up every 2 or 3 minutes. They'd let play go on if they could do. But then we'd suddenly get a referee from the Premier League that's had a bad game or is being suspended or whatever. Is suddenly dumped on the EFL, and we've got them in charge. And to be honest with you, they were the bad ones. Why should, whether it's the whether it's the Championship, League One or Two, why should we have the referees that are rubbish in the Premier League? And I've got to say, Richard Keys has come out and he has said that he should be allowed to continue to referee in the EFL.
Yeah, I know Richard, and I've seen that. I think that he's taken the view that players who might be caught doing misdemeanours like drug taking or other aspects, gambling, for example, face a suspension but can return. I don't share Richard's view. I understand it, but I don't share his view. I think that when we look at the protection, for example, you probably now see referees coming to Premier League games in a bus. They meet at the hotel the night before. They have a discussion. You're trying to enhance the teamwork, all that goes with it. The referee who's refereeing from the Premier League into the Championship is not necessarily relegated. The reasoning behind that whole scenario is this: when the PGMOL were formed and the Football League felt that there might be a loss to them of the top performing referees because they were all shifting to the Premier League, there was an arrangement where the Premier League referees would each weekend be appointed to up to 5 Football League games. That's the Championship, EFL, EF2, because the Football League are in effect a funding partner of the PGMOL, seeing it as one business. So I think that there is an element, however, where a referee might be losing his form or he might be coming back from injury. And just like a player, he might be playing in the reserves. You do the same. So this isn't really how that happens. Now, there are other areas where the league, the Football League then, and I presumably do now, on some of their big games, want a Premier League referee. You see this when you get to the playoffs, where all of a sudden you've got Football League referees in those first initial games, and then it all of a sudden moves towards the professional referees. This is almost a requirement by the Football League rather than Howard Webb and his organisation.
So are the and I take that on board, and I didn't realise that. Fair point. But so all the referees that we're saying in the EFL, they're not necessarily full-time referees.
Well, in the Championship, they are. The SG2 is this group of SG2 referees are, maybe not full-time, all of them, but in reality, there is within that element of SG2, there are one or two. I watched Lewis Smith, who's had a couple of Premier League games, maybe 3 or 4 now in the Premier League. He refereed the Sheffield Derby a couple of weeks ago, And I was at the game and watched closely, and you suddenly realise, just a minute, he has the potential of moving forward. I think there are some referees that have moved into the Premier League on good performances in the Championship, but have not met the standard. And it's those that I think should be perhaps moved on or back down to the level that they're competent at.
No, again, fair point. I can't believe we've got a referee on here who I'm agreeing with all the time. I mean, should we have a zero tolerance for anything? And I mean, again, we're talking about grey areas in refereeing. And I can remember when I was at school and I was a member of a book club, and I actually bought the referee's rule book, and it was only about that thick.
Yes.
And now it's probably, and they change it every year. If everybody knows that whether it's gambling, drug taking, anything like that, whatever you are, whether you're sort of, an owner, even if you like, but it's zero tolerance. It is a ban for life. And then everybody knows where they stand. Everybody can't say, well, I thought it was this, or I might have been that. If you know it's a ban for life, it's zero tolerance, you know where you stand.
Yeah, I think that from a refereeing point of view, I'm quite clear that I think that you shouldn't be necessarily a reflection of society as a referee. It's a little bit, you're asking your policeman to be different, and therefore I think in that sense you've got to uphold the dignity and the integrity of the position you have, and through the training and the support mechanisms at the PGMOL that are in place, I think that is what I would expect. Maybe I'm old-fashioned in my view, but I think that this was an absolute nonsense, wasn't it, this video? I mean, when you actually look at it, you think, how stupid that someone who's, in effect, I think, thrown away a career, having probably run around in the local parks for 10 years before he's got to the elite level. And, and you suddenly go, why? Because it's not only a career, it's his job as well. And then he's got this, if they do throw him out, he's then got to find employment, hasn't he? So it's not, it's a massive punishment, but you're in the eye of the media, but you're also in the eye of the public.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think you've just got to be. Sometimes, they'd say of referees they're a bit aloof. Let me give you an example. I refereed a game in Italy, two Italian teams. It might have been Juve and Inter Milan, something like that. And at the halfway line, the previous week, I'd refereed Italy against someone.
Right.
And the captain of I think Juve was the same captain as the Italian team. Might have been Inter. Anyhow, at halfway line, I'm stood on the centre point for the toss up, and I walked towards the captain that I recognised the previous week, and I almost said to him, "Greetings, and I hope the game is enjoyable as it was last week." That's it. The match observer at the end of the match, I was very complimentary about my performance, but he said one observation, Mr. Hackett. Before the game had started, you made a bit of a play of moving towards one of the captains. You actually walked away and greeted him fairly warmly. And a lot of the spectators in this stadium thought, oh, just a minute. That one picture. Yes. And you suddenly go, oh, crikey. They don't think that, but I learned from that.
Well, this is,
I wasn't biased towards him, but it's how other people view you, isn't it?
It's
the teacher in the schoolroom. You have to be on your best behaviour.
Yes. Oh, it is. And, whilst you're in that job, you just have to have, and you've got to accept, I mean, it's not you know, you're not telling me that David Coote didn't realise that if he was being recorded, that one day this might come out. We've seen it happen, with different footballers and people before, where they thought they were doing something private, and suddenly it's all over the news, and you find out, I suppose, who your friends are. But interesting to see, though, that the latest things that it's been reported is that they don't, or they're not going to introduce drug testing at all still.
Well, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I generally think that this is a mistake by them. They haven't thought it through. The simple thing is this. They introduced the WADA system. We're talking about professional sports people here, referees. They're athletes, right? And you might argue, well, what's drug taking going to do, as you rightly made reference to earlier, enhance performance and all go. This is about checking, doing a random check, and it might only happen once a year if it happens once a year to the individual.
Yeah.
But I think in a month or 2 months' time, when this case is finally finished, and whatever the outcome is to David Coote, wouldn't it be a good position for Howard Webb to say, I've introduced drug taking, I've drug tested all my referees, and we can now put that one to bed and move on.
Draws a line, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
because when we now see a referee have an indifferent performance in the future, what's going to be happening? Yes. I mean, I don't think they think the bigger picture. I think contact with the fans and how fans behave and how they view things. It's this simple thing, isn't it? The big screen, play the VAR on the big screen. We haven't got this pregnant pause inside the stadium where we're looking around and thinking, what's going on here, lads? And then making our own mind up and all that goes with it, losing the focus of the game and the enjoyment bit. This is a little bit like going to a theatre and whatever you're watching, and all of a sudden the curtain comes down and you think, what's going on here? And then 2 minutes later or 3 minutes later, the curtain goes up and they're looking at each other and you suddenly go, we're in the entertainment business at the elite level. And I think part of it is get real. The fans are a major part of the sport. And we have to ensure that they are satisfied with the integrity. Yeah, we know that they'll always argue about decisions because referees do.
Yeah,
right, And I've sat in rooms with our best referees arguing about the interpretation of a handball or a penalty kick or an offside decision. Yeah. Ultimately, that's the way we learn and improve and hopefully enjoy the game more.
I mean, it always says, isn't it? What they want is consistency, but you're never going to get consistency in sport because with a football team, they can go out and win 3-0 one week, and then the same team the next week can go out and lose 2-1. And it's the same with referees. Like you say, if one referee says it's a penalty, and then the next week another referee says that's not a penalty, and they look pretty much the same, it's interpretation. And you have to have a certain amount of that within the game, don't you, surely?
Well, it's a judgment, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of the laws are subjective. And, you would hope that what the lawmakers would do is examine a law and try and take some of the degree of the subjectivity out of it. Yeah, but I think also it's about understanding it. It's about recognizing that the speed of the game has increased, the skill sets have increased, the game's changed. And, in my day, we trained for endurance because the game was generally one pace, and we had to, as amateurs in a professional game, we knew that we had to do 90 minutes, but we could be called upon for an extra 30. So we trained accordingly. And then the pass-back law came in, if I'll put it as bluntly as that, and that was the start of an increase in the speed of the game and the dynamics. So that's why the sports science that I brought in through Professor Matt Weston was changing from endurance into dynamic sprinting, where we moved the sprinting from 25 sprints a game on average around the 50, which was where the players were at. We were able to move in short bursts. I brought a sprint coach in to improve that sprint off the mark. So I think the game changes, the dynamics change, and referees have to sort it out. At the moment, I think one of my frustrations is all this grappling that takes place in the penalty area. And why does the referee go in and do it and say it and then does nothing? Why are we suddenly allowing the ball to be outside the quadrant, arguing that the sphere is touching the line if you look down? Why don't we just keep it simple? Ball in the quadrant, please, as it used to be. And why don't we get a little bit of management into the throw-ins rather than letting the guy take 15 yards down the line? Why don't we stop him before he starts running and saying, this is where I want it. I'm not to a meter. Yeah. This is where I want it. This is how I was coached. This is when I watched and ran the line for the Jack Taylors, the Partridges, and John Hunting and others, Gordon Hill. This is what I saw, them being proactive, communicating, looking human, occasionally apologising if they thought they got it wrong, and then getting on with the game. And the interchange, now some of it looks a bit robotic. And then when you get to the VAR and you're able to listen in, you go, that's chaos.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if I was the referee, I wouldn't want all that nonsense. I'd be shouting, shut up.
But look, fans, I mean, we were told how much they missed us during COVID, but as soon as we came back, they didn't seem to be happy to have us back. But look, they forget the fans. It is a sad fact of life these days. But I think David Coote, and we'll end with this, but I think David Coote is the unfortunate one that he's the first referee that's really this has blown up out over. And I think if the PGMOL, for me as a fan, don't make an example of this, then us fans will be looking at that. Like you say, it gives us an excuse for every time, as you said, a referee makes a bad decision or is a bad, we know what he's been doing before the match, and there'll be the jokes about things on the white line or what's he spraying with this magic thing at the free kick. And again, like one rule for one rule for another. They have to come down hard on him and be seen to be taking action.
No question. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, my view is that he's gone. I think it'll be a very difficult case for him to prove that what he did was acceptable, because it was not. I think the PGMOL have a duty towards him, and that effectively is the way that you would do that in business is pay the guy off and say cheerio.
And try and sort him out some help if he needs it.
Well, I mean, the facts are that with the referees that I demoted back to an amateur status, they were given support in finding alternative work, support in their career, financial recompense, all that went with it. So it was a package. It was a responsible package in order to get them rehabilitated into another level of refereeing. Here it's somewhat different because I think his career is over. Yeah.
Keith, thank you so very, very much for coming on and being so honest and upfront with us. I really, really do appreciate it. And good luck in whatever you've got coming up.
Pleasure. Sorry about the cough and the cold.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. And if you've got a spare of boots, get them on for Saturday. We could do you a few of those grounds around the country. Keith, thank you very much. All the best to you and your family. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thanks very, very much to Keith. We've been on before. Really do appreciate him coming on and being so honest and upfront with us. you don't expect to sort of hear BS, and he didn't give it us that. He thinks he's gone. He doesn't think he'll come back from this. And as I think all of us say, whatever we think about what he said, and I don't know, are we sort of upset with the fact that he had those thoughts or the fact that he said it? I have personally, if somebody said, "Oh, I heard him saying this" or whatever, look, we know nobody likes everybody they work with. That would be asking too much, but it's everything that's gone on it, and I just don't know. I don't know how he can come back with this. They've got to do the due diligence. They've got to look into it and be seen to doing it and looking into it properly. We will see. Look, if you're interested, this may come back up again tonight, because tonight we do have a new show coming out. There we go. Let me just get rid of that comment. Talking Balls, late night. Yes. For those of you that remember, we, myself and Craig, who is the Bournemouth fan, we did the Talking Balls two fans down the pub. That's changing from this week. The two fans down the pub Talking Balls is going to be coming to you on a Saturday morning. We've got no Soccer AM anymore. I'm not saying we're Soccer AM, but we'll be sorting your foreplay out before the matches kick off Saturday morning, 9 o'clock from the pub. But tonight we're just doing an evening version. It's after the Watershed. Go get me gin and tonics ready. Who knows where that might go. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Scott for being in and modding. Thanks to everybody else that has been in. Thanks, like you say there, to Keith. Really, really do appreciate him coming on and discussing that. I'll see you all back here hopefully at 10 o'clock. Until then, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care, guys. Good night.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.